into a bowl, and then like that's my breakfast. So,
So it's sweet.
it's not sweet.
It's not sweet.
No,
Chocolate?
no, 90% chocolate. When I say chocolate, I always mean like dark chocolate. I don't mean like sugar with a little bit of chocolate.
So it's bitter.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Next one. Also about travel, like when you travel and live around, like what experimental community event inspired you the most? This is from Matterstown.
Yeah, I guess it means it depends on like what you mean by an experimental community event, right? I mean, obviously, Zuzalo last year was probably the biggest thing in that category, and there were definitely a lot of just interesting groups and events and activities inside of there that I found really fascinating. Look, both in terms of like actually using Ethereum and actually using zero knowledge proofs and those things, but also experimenting on the health side, experimenting on the community side. In terms of like the other big thing, which is different Ethereum events that I go to, I mean, I definitely respect ETH Denver for just like being, like interesting and cool, and in a bunch of ways, like like they had me wear a buffalo suit. I mean, I do know that like it's gotten a lot bigger in the last couple of years, and I haven't like been to the last couple of years, but the ones that I've been to were definitely fun. The one in Vietnam that I was just at were fun. I think this was the first one where like the entire venue was outdoors, and they made it like really fun, and like they found a venue that's like this nice thing that's like kind of similar to the Westlake in Hangzhou. Like that's the closest reference I have.
It was last week, right?
Yeah, it was last week, and it was definitely by far the most COVID-safe conference I've ever been to. That was cool, but yeah, and I definitely wants to see more experimentation and like different event styles, and like not just bouncing around between Hiltons and like various spin-offs that are actually owned by Hilton every other week. So,
okay, we'll try our best next year. Okay, next up, what are you most excited to work on these days? It doesn't have to be like Ethereum related.
Oh. Okay, well, since I'll answer about Ethereum and all the other questions, I guess I'll focus on the non-Ethereum stuff that I've been doing. I mean, let's see, what am I doing that's non-Ethereum related? Well, again, Zuzalo is continuing this year, and it's like Ethereum connected, but the community obviously goes beyond that, and there's a bunch of independent groups that are making their own various villages this year, so I'm following along, helping them when I can, excited to actually get a chance to visit some of them soon. I've been playing around with some of the recent AI tools, and running some of the models locally and using them to draw and do other things. So that's a really important space to just get more understanding in. What other things? Again, just learning, and yeah, I think there's learning about some of everything. Yeah, so cool. Those are the big ones.
Nice. We're gonna have some AI related questions later. Oh, by the way, this question is from Coincider.
Okay.
All right, so let's go back to Ethereum related questions. A lot of medias want to ask, like including Rug Radio, Metaverse Post, Foresight News.
Okay, Rug Radio, Grenade. Wow, these are like pretty violent names.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Like the blockchain group media. I mean.
Yeah.
All right, so the question is about Dencun. I think you expect this question, of course. So how does the Dencun upgrade contribute to the Ethereum ecosystem? Does it meet your expectation?
Yeah, so the purpose of the Dencun upgrade is to massively increase the scalability and reduce the transaction fees that are paid by layer 2s, and particularly rollups. And the way that it does this is by creating an independent section of data space inside of each block. This is what are called blobs. And this data cannot be accessed by the EVM, which is important because what that also means is that when a client is verifying an Ethereum block, they don't have to have access to that data at exactly the same time. But the data is data that the Ethereum blockchain guarantees is available, so this is very useful by rollups and in principle any layer 2 project that depends on data being available for its security, so that, for example, to ensure that other nodes can sync if the current nodes disappear, or to ensure that if someone sees a wrong answer they can challenge and things like this. And we have already seen over the past week layer 2 fees decrease massively, in some cases by a factor of like 50. Now, I think it is important to warn that there is a possibility that these fees will increase again as there come to be more users of blobs, because as there come to be more users, eventually the fees will go up, but it's still a pretty significant scalability gain, and we expect the number of blobs that the Ethereum chain supports to continue to increase greatly over the next few years.
Is it better than you expected, like the outcome?
I think it depends what you mean by better. So like from a technological perspective, the upgrade went by flawlessly. So I think the percent of attesters only went down from like 99 to 95%, which is like better than like any other fork that we've had. The amount of usage is like interestingly low, right? Right now the target is about 3 blobs per block, but the average amount used is only 1 blob per block, which means that right now blobs are like incredibly cheap, right? And if you want to publish a blob, like you basically only have to pay Ethereum transaction fees. And I mean, it's possible that Ethereum transaction fee is being high as like one of the reasons for this, right? But like, if the price of blobs tends to 0, right, then like you can just go use them to like back up an encrypted copy of your hard drive or whatever, right? There's like an infinite number of uses for like a guaranteed data space, right? So I do think it will increase eventually. But it is definitely good for present day rollups that it's very cheap. But definitely, looking forward to usage going up over the next few months.
It's also good if the usage going up.
Exactly.
Okay, next one, also relevant. So what do you envision as the single most transformative impact Ethereum will have on society in the next 5 years?
Yeah, I think the next 5 years are going to be critical for Ethereum because a lot of the applications that have been like fairly theoretical and fairly small scale are actually starting to get to the point where they're ready for real world use. And I think in terms of like the blockchain space really affecting the real world. I mean, one big impact that it already has had is just ideas generated by the space have really filtered into the broader world in a lot of ways that have not been appreciated. So like, for example, Reddit is doing their IPO soon, and one of the things that they've done is they've given people who have been active in the community, like very active contributors, moderators, the ability to participate on the same terms as institutional investors. And I think that kind of approach is definitely something where crypto applications have really helped blaze the trail and legitimize and set the standard. But aside from that, basically it's the biggest impact like actual use has been, I think, stable coins, right? And people just using stable coins to save money, to trade, to just conduct transactions. And I think what will happen over the next 5 years, right, is that first of all, in order to succeed in that space, you need to have very good UX and you need to have very low fees. And historically, Ethereum has not had those things, but over the next 5 years, Ethereum will start to have those things. And we're already seeing layer 2s and things like Base already starting to get there. But I think that will continue improving. And once that gets there, then I expect Ethereum to be a very leading player in just helping to make stablecoins accessible to people in a way that is actually open, actually decentralized, and that actually doesn't require trusting fragile third parties. But going beyond that, I expect non-financial applications to really start to make a much larger impact, right? So, we've been seeing for the past year the success of Farcaster especially, and also to some degree Lens and a few others in creating alternatives to social media platforms. And there's a big desire to have alternatives to things like Twitter and Facebook at the moment. And these projects, I think, are doing a very good job of leading, and I expect for that to continue, and I expect that the particular benefit that decentralization gives to these projects, which is basically that anyone can write a new client, and if you have a new client, you can access and you can write to the same content, and you don't have to build your network effect from scratch. I expect that benefit to become much more very clearly visible to a lot of people, and to actually see a very vibrant ecosystem of people creating different clients, of people creating different ways to see the same content. So I think that space is going to be interesting. The Ethereum-based identity space, I expect, it is growing quickly. The technology is improving quickly, and I am really hoping it will see some mainstream usage. Right, so this includes, different proof of personhood protocols, whether that's, proof of humanity or, the WorldCoin system, or Idena or any of those, and it includes social graph-based things like Pope and Exu stamps. It includes things like Gitcoin Passport. Basically, one of the big challenges that a lot of people are worrying right now is how to prove that an account on some platform actually is a person, as opposed to being a bot, or being one of a million bots or accounts controlled by the same person. And the big risk I see is that when people need to solve that problem, people will jump to centralized solutions. And centralized solutions, I think, are going to be are going to have very bad risks in terms of excluding all kinds of people. And I hope that the Ethereum space can actually lead in coming up with some of those decentralized alternatives and making them really accessible. So I think all of those things are important, and I think are going to continue to grow.
Cool. What a beautiful vision. So the next one is about the challenge. Can you explain how you see the current challenges in Ethereum proof of stake, and how single slot finality and other upgrades could address this issue? Is it rainbow staking?
Yeah. So I think the big challenges in proof of staking right now largely have to do with various centralization risks, right? So the big ones that people are concerned about, one is on the MEV side, and the others are risks to do with just the function of staking and being a validator and attesting by itself, right? Basically, the challenge on the MEV side is that we're seeing growing builder centralization and builder censorship, and relays are emerging as this other kind of centralized actor. And there's a set of techniques. One of them is execution tickets, which is basically the latest form of what we call PBS, proposer builder separation. And except it's probably more accurate to call it a tester builder separation. And then the other one is inclusion lists. And I think the way to think about inclusion lists is basically to try to get back as close as possible to roughly the kind of world that Ethereum was in, let's say, 2016, when you would have decentralized validators be responsible for creating blocks, right? Except here, they what we mean by a block is we just mean a list of transactions, which transactions get included, right? Because that's the most important thing from a like fairness and censorship resistance perspective. And then actors like builders would be responsible particularly for like some very specific set of functions that are important, but that do have centralization risks to them. So one is like basically block prefix and block ordering, like the part of creating a block that could involve capturing MEV. Another is computing the state root, so like running the EVM computation, eventually doing a ZK snark of that computation, then doing aggregation tasks, so signature aggregation, ERC-4337 aggregation, potentially aggregating like signatures and or like proofs from layer 2s. So basically, all of that centralized stuff would be done by like builders that would be selected through an auction with execution tickets. And the parts of block pre-creation that are just more relevant to the protocol's permissionlessness, which is just choosing transactions, would be done by validators in a way that's less vulnerable to censorship. So that's one part. Another part has to do with like staking itself, right? And I did a series of polls recently, both on Farcaster and on this ETH Taipei presentation that I did earlier, where I basically asked, if you are not staking, then why? And by far the biggest answer that people gave is that they have less than 32 ETH, right? And probably the second biggest answer is that people have running a node is too difficult. So for running a node being too difficult, we already have a pre-existing technical roadmap that is basically intended to solve this, right? So the next big step is, for a long time, has been Verkle trees. And Verkle trees have actually made a lot of progress. Like there are active testnets, there are working implementations of it. And with Verkle trees as a node, you would not have to store the state locally. And with EIP 4444 history expiry, you would also not have to store most of the history locally. And so the amount of data that you would need to be a node would decrease from like multiple terabytes to basically being able to, in principle, run a node in RAM. And once we have that, then, like for example, resyncing and syncing will become like much faster. Like maybe, like potentially, it could be a few minutes, and it'll just become a much simpler task that's much easier for people to do. Then with ZK snarks, requirements are going to decrease further, right? Like I think in the long term, running a node will feel like downloading some data, like hashing it and verifying a snark, right? Just like a few very simple computations that will be very easy to do as just like a background process on any computer, maybe even a phone, even inside the browser. And there's a pre-existing technology roadmap to get to that point. The less than 32 ETH part is more challenging, and basically because originally 32 ETH was this compromise between not requiring too much ETH to be a staker and not having too many stakers because that would make blocks too hard to process. And there's some new approaches to proof of stake that basically involve sacrificing the requirements that every staker participates in every round of consensus. And if you sacrifice that requirements, then you're able to get the benefits of single slot finality, so you have finality after one slot, and the benefits of, for example, being able to stake with less than 32 ETH and having like simpler and lighter nodes all at the same time, right? And there's a lot of challenges in the details of like how you actually make that kind of algorithm work. And rainbow staking is one of those proposals. My writings around 8192 signatures per slot are one of those proposals. So there's a lot of different ideas and thinking now, and this is a very active research area.
Cool. Nice. And the next one also from Metaverse, but maybe you already covered.
Yes, I already answered Verkle trees.
Yeah. Nice. Let's see. How about the modularized blockchain solutions? Like many projects proposing this solution, and we are also seeing ideas that the Ethereum L1 could be responsible for shared sequencing. How do you see the broader question? What are the functions that an L1 should handle centrally, and what should be left to individual L2s?
Yeah, I think we're seeing like some movements in opposite directions, right? So modularizing, like blockchains, so it basically points toward a future where like each individual chain does less, and different components are done by different parts. And shared sequencing, especially, like as described by Justin Drake, one of our researchers who is a big proponent of the Ethereum L1 doing shared sequencing. And basically, like that's a vision where the L1 does more, right? So if you look at what the L1 is responsible for today, the L1 is responsible for shared security, and it's a shared settlement layer. It's like basically with Ethereum, it ensures that every L2 has an ability to read any other L2 in a way that does not depend on any kind of centralized like actors or even any validator sets, right? Because even if Ethereum gets 51% attacked, like all of the L2s get reverted at the same time, right? So you even still have consistency. And then Ethereum provides data availability for rollups, but then it doesn't provide data availability for validiums. And then sequencing, so choosing the order of transactions, is currently left on a rollup by rollup basis, right? So the question is, what is an ideal approach in the future? So on the shared sequencing question, I personally am agnostic. Like, I know that some people are in favor of it, and some people think that shared sequencing is completely overrated. Like, basically, a lot of people, I think, would argue that one, the benefits of shared liquidity are actually not that large beyond a certain size. Right, like for a regular user, it doesn't matter if market depth is $5 million or $10 million. You just need market depth to be big enough to handle your own transactions. And they would also argue that cross L2 MEV is not actually that large, right? Like basically, any MEV that is arbitrage between Optimism and Arbitrum could be decomposed into MEV between Optimism and Binance, and then separately MEV between Arbitrum and Binance, right? Like that's the basic way to think about this. And so if, to the extent that that's true, then there aren't actually large gains from some central all-seeing market actor, having a global view into all the L2s and choosing transactions on that basis, and it could be fine for all the L2s to be sequencing separately. But this is, I think, an open debate, and I'm content to just keep watching the debate and see how it goes. Okay. For other kinds of functions, I think we definitely want to really expand the amount of data that L2 or that Ethereum can support directly, right? And in an ideal world, everything would be a rollup, and Ethereum would handle data availability for everything. But we know in practice, that's probably not enough. Even the long-term vision of 16 megabytes per slot is probably not enough. And so the thing that I want to see is I want to see very high security stuff being on-chain rollups, but then other things using various kinds of optimistic data constructions that basically do data off-chain by default, but data on-chain in specific cases where there might be some kind of problem. So Plasma is a good example of these constructions, but there's a whole spectrum of constructions that are like that. Another big one has to do with account abstraction, right? Basically, if your account has state that might have to be changed, particularly, if you have a key and you want to revoke the key and add a new key, if you want to change algorithms, then where does that state live, right? And if you have an account in 100 places, then to update your account, do you have to send that same data 100 times, right? And there, one of the ideas here is to basically, this minimal key store rollup approach where that state lives in one particular place, possibly one, a very neutral based rollup on top of Ethereum, and then all of the other L2s would be able to call into it to prove with every transaction what the current state is that they're accessing. These are still early stage ideas, and they're being still discussed in the wallet space. So I think my view on this is very pragmatic, right? If there is a function that is important enough to handle at L1, then it absolutely should be. Otherwise, I think leaving different room for different L2s to do different things is also very valuable.
Mm-hmm. Nice. All right, that concludes the Ethereum-related questions.
Okay, let's talk about Dogecoin.
No way.
I mean, come on, we want an investment. No.
Don't recall that.
Okay. No, yeah, we'll let Elon talk about the dogs. Yeah. No.
Hey, you're in front of a lot of media.
It's okay.
All right. So security and privacy is questions from Black Temple. How does ZK address the trust issue for non-technical individuals? Like, how can they know if ZK truly achieves the identification?
Yeah, and so I think the question here is basically, if you have a system that gives you some ZK level of privacy in theory, then like as a user, how do you know that you actually get that level of privacy in practice, right? And I think I see this as basically a continuation of a problem that Ethereum already has, which is that if you're putting your assets into smart contracts instead of just giving your assets to some guy, then like how do you actually know that the smart contract doesn't like have a backdoor so the guy can just take your funds whenever he wants? And the solutions that we have so far for that are, one, we have obviously like Etherscan contract reading ability. Then, so you can read a contract, people can publish source code, like Etherscan checks the source code. And like that's great as a developer tool for sophisticated users. For regular users that are not able to go and read 1,000 lines of code themselves, we've definitely been seeing wallets start to become more sophisticated, right? So we've been seeing wallets start to give more warnings, like basically show, like, are you interacting with a popular application? Are you interacting with some application like other people have not interacted before? One thing I eventually want to see is I want to see like dApp user interfaces become versioned, right? So like even just like uploading the interface onto IPFS instead of onto a website, and then if you do that, then like every single update would have to be a blockchain transaction, right? And you can make the authorization for that transaction just like be a multi-sig controlled by the team, right? And so there would be no server that you can hack into to force an update. And it would also, from a wallet perspective, then the wallet would be able to show you, like basically, like how recently, like has the site been updated? Like have the contents been approved and things like that, right? So we want to see more of those. Basically, like I think we need to see more, like ways of aggregating the opinions of like high quality, like researchers and auditors, and we've been starting to see that. And like I do think that the wallet is going to play a very important role. Like I think it's going to be an important like active assistance to the user in aggregating all of this kind of information. And I think all of these kinds of tools that we are using and that we are going to use for kind of like regular Ethereum are going to need to be applied basically in the same way for ZK technologies, right? So like in the same way as we have, like Etherscan Solidity publish your source code, we need to have, like Etherscan, like publish your Circom code, or even, like publish your, like Stark, like Cairo pre-code, or whatever the original source language is, right? And then, like it would compile and it would actually verify that the on-chain verification key matches. Like these are things that totally can be done, right? And I hope someone does them in the hackathon tomorrow. Like basically take exactly the same types of tools that we've been using for Ethereum contracts and just apply them to ZK, both to ZK on chain and to a sort of off-chain personal ZK and things like Zoopass in basically the same way.
Nice. Perfect. Next one, also security related. How do you propose Ethereum to address the present concern of quantum-enabled threats? What implications does this have for the broader cryptocurrency ecosystem?
Yeah.
I think it's the same question.
It's a similar question.
Will there be a standard of criteria or symptoms or foundation has already predicted or estimated for the community to be alerted to quantum attack?
So one thing that is, I think, important to realize, and that I think a lot of people still don't realize, is that from a technology perspective, like we have quantum-resistant algorithms for every single thing that is vulnerable to quantum computers, right? So quantum computers break existing elliptic curve signatures. We have like 5 different types of hash and lattice and isogeny-based signatures that are quantum-resistant. Quantum computers break elliptic curve-based encryption and stealth addresses. We have lattice-based and isogeny-based solutions for that, right? Quantum computers break KZG and IPA-based zero-knowledge proofs. We have Starks, and recently, there has been actually a new paper that basically showed how you can reduce the number of rounds in the Fry protocol, which makes Starks about 2 times smaller than before, right? So Starks are hash-based proofs, hashes are quantum resistant, so Starks are quantum resistant. Fully homomorphic encryption, actually we're very lucky that the fully homomorphic encryption constructions that we have and that we had from day one were just quantum resistant out the door, right? Quantum computers do not help with lattices. So in theory, it's a solved problem, but there is an important logistical challenge in like going from theory to practice. And one nice thing is that I think we do have the ability to like do an emergency recovery that preserves like most people's funds. And like I wrote about this on ETH Research recently. But we want to get from most to all, and we want to get to the point where like there's something that can be done where ideally users are just quantum resistant out the door, and even the protocol itself is. And for that to happen, like one is we need account abstraction, because account abstraction has lots of benefits, but one of those benefits is that you can provide whatever signature algorithm you want as a way of verifying your account, right? So if you want to make it quantum resistant, it can be quantum resistant. Another is that we need the Ethereum consensus layer to become quantum resistant, right? In that case, it's a bit harder engineering-wise because our current approach relies heavily on the fact that we use BLS signatures, which are incredibly efficient. And anything quantum-based is going to be less efficient, and that's a fact, right? And that's actually one of the reasons why I've been pushing for 8192 signatures per slot, for example, right? I think we need to give ourselves more wiggle room so that we can adjust to a less efficient algorithm if needed. And at the same time, researchers are going full speed ahead on optimizing and measuring and benchmarking post-quantum alternatives as much as possible.
Nice. Yeah, it's nice to hear.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that concludes the security part. The next section will be industry trends, so a little bit random. First one is AI related. So in your opinion, what are the key benefits of integrating AI with cryptocurrency, and how might this reshape the industry?
Yeah, I think a lot of people have been very curious and asking about what is the AI crypto intersection for basically the last 10 years. And I think it makes sense to ask that because at a very high level and a very thematic level, it feels like there should be, right? AI and crypto are 2 very important technology trends of our time. And there is this line that AI tends towards centralization and crypto tends toward decentralization, and there's supposed to be some kind of yin-yang complements between the 2, right? But the question always has been can you go from having this kind of thematic convergence to having actual examples of applications that use both in ways that make sense for both in a productive way? And in my recent post from about 2 months ago, I tried to analyze that question and tried to identify some concrete applications that make sense. So one of them that I talked about is AI is participating in prediction markets or in other kinds of markets on top of Ethereum. Well, basically, you can make markets much more micro scale and then create AIs that can play in them. Then another is AIs to as a part of wallets and to help users make sense of the online and on-chain environment that they're interacting with. A third is using cryptography, including things like ZK snarks and ZKML, MPC, and AI inside of FHE and things like this to try to create AI models that are secure and robust and privacy preserving enough that it becomes safe to actually use them as a central participant in on-chain applications, whether DAOs or like oracles or something else. And then the fourth is basically, if that succeeds, then that could be used for AIs in other areas. So out of those, I think the first two are the most kind of obvious short term, and then the last two, realistically, are like more speculative, right? So, like, I definitely don't want to give the impression that like AI crypto applications are going to be the next great narrative that will carry the industry forward or whatever else, right? But I do absolutely think that these intersections are like worth people looking into. Yeah, and another one is AI's role in debugging code, right? Basically, like one of the biggest challenges of the space is bugs in our code, and one of the nice possibilities that maybe we can look forward to, we don't know yet, is the possibility that AI will make it much easier to basically use formal verification tools to prove that much larger sets of code satisfy certain properties. And if we do that, then we could potentially have guaranteed bug-free ZK EVMs, for example, right? Like the more that we can reduce the number of bugs, the more secure the space can become. And there's a chance that AI could be super valuable in that too.
Bug-free sounds really ambitious. All right, and what is your opinions on ETH restaking fever? It's from AB Media. Do you want to
yeah. I mean, restaking, I think, is interesting because it's on the one hand, it is potentially a very valuable way to unlock ETH that's being used in staking and make it accessible to other applications. And this is one of those things where if there's a demand and if we don't provide for that demand somehow, then there's a risk that basically the demand will get taken over by centralized actors, right? Because anyone can just accept people's ETH and stake on people's behalf and then issue a token and then just let people restake that token, right? But that's not a world that we want to see. And but then on the other hand, there definitely are risks from doing restaking wrong, basically risks that various kinds of systemic risks end up also affecting the Ethereum validator set. And so there's some different approaches to that, and I know that different projects have been looking into it. I mean, so far I'm just watching this space and looking forward to seeing what comes up.
Perfect. You kind of talked about this already. You are more active on Farcaster than Twitter.
Are you more active on Farcaster than on Twitter?
Similar, actually.
Okay. Who here is more active on Farcaster than on Twitter? Who here is going to Farcast whatever article comes out of this before they tweet it? You should. Okay. Good. No, come on. We're the decentralized space. We need to use our own stuff.
So do you think that these social applications like Farcaster can really compete with Web2, like Facebook, Twitter, social apps, Twitter?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the interesting things with the social space is one is that it has network effects, but it also has anti-network effects. In that, Twitter is the place where all the people are, but it's also the place where all the really annoying people are, right? And it's so I've found that Farcaster has already gotten to the point where there's enough people there that it's interesting, but it's the amount of the kind of engagement that I get on there is actually higher quality, and I think the other thing that decentralized social can really bring to the table is one of the big issues in the Twitter management transition and all of the discourse around it in the last few years is basically that Twitter has like has and had a bunch of features that were basically about like trying to tell apart, the like high quality content and people from like low quality content and people. And a lot of people had critiques that these mechanisms were, including the the moderation and including the blue checks, were kind of like very centralized and like privileged a particular group with a particular like set of opinions and biases. And the crypto space, and I think a lot of these non-financial Ethereum applications are fundamentally about solving that problem in a way that is more decentralized, and like that basically trying to solve the trust problem without entrenching some centralized actor that decides who and what is good and who and what is bad. And I think things like that could end up combining with Farcaster and Lens and these other protocols, and we could actually get to see like a very live example of seeing those kinds of techniques work, right? And Farcaster is definitely starting to like have an actual spam problem, so it is something that they are going to need to work on. But I'm excited to see that. I'm also excited to see Farcaster alternate clients, right? Like the big thing about Farcaster is that it's not a server, it's a chain, and so in principle you can make your own clients, and your clients can read or write to the same content that people using Warpcast can see, and that's something that I think can absolutely be a wonderful place for people to start trying to create their own clients and trying to add like interesting new features, right? Like you could imagine people putting their own community notes on Farcaster, or people like putting like various like AI-based fact checking, or even like prediction market-based fact checking or whatever into Farcaster. You could imagine people creating their own mechanisms for identifying which participants are high reputation and which participants are not, for like doing content prioritization. And like different groups of people can have different approaches, and so all of those things can be done by like different clients, and so people would get to choose for themselves which ones they want to look at the Farcaster content through. So I'm very excited to see those kinds of trends play out. The other thing I'm excited about is that I feel like Farcaster in particular, it does a good job of being pragmatic and of like actually making sure that it's easy to use enough. And like it's managed to be used by non-crypto people, I think, in ways that a lot of other previous applications have not. And I think that's like also an important success to build on and for other applications to try to replicate.
Okay, let's start using Farcaster more. Then there will be more spam. Let's see the time. Okay, the next one from DL News. In the face of greater institutional adoption and greater concentration of power within crypto, how can the industry stay true to its original ethos of decentralization and freedom?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's several important things that the space needs to do at the same time. I think one is like basically like solve the public goods problem. So there's a lot of these projects that do a better job of staying true to these values, but often doing that involves sacrificing on business models. And in those cases, the community needs to come up with and execute on alternative ways of funding and supporting those projects. And that's something that we need to get better at. That's something that the various grant-giving entities, including Optimism RPGF, including Gitcoin grants, including also things like Protocol Guild, are doing a better and better job of providing, which I think is valuable. But it's an area where I think we need to continue to do more. I think we also need more active community-wide efforts at standardization. Basically, one risk that I see is the risk that there are going to be large actors in the ecosystem that try to pull away from standards and into essentially their own walled garden and closed ecosystems. And if that happens, then the value of the entire ecosystem as a whole decreases, right? And that really ends up sacrificing on the benefits of the space. Also, I think people need to keep actually executing on like making real implementations of the theoretical benefits that crypto provides. So like for example, every one of these major protocols should have an alternate graphical user implementation made by an alternate team, right? And like if you can't do that, then that's a problem, and the team should be called out on it until they can, right? Yes, there should be like alternative GUIs for every one of these layer 2s, and like all of the function in those layer 2s for Farcaster. So like Flink exists, but we need more. There should be alternative GUIs for like even like Gnosis Safe, for example. Like before I was willing to switch my own cold wallet to Gnosis Safe, I actually like poked in and I made my own GUI for it just to make sure that I could withdraw. And actually that had, even ended up saving me at the beginning, because it turned out that at the beginning the Safe UI was not compatible with the status wallet, but like my UI was. Like we need to make sure that we actually like support open standards for things like accessing logs, which is like dependent on a lot of like basically making sure that we actually have decentralized alternatives for infrastructure that's not blockchains. Another important thing, I think, is like, this balance between preserving the ethos as much as possible and regulatory issues and mainstream acceptance. And back in September, I co-wrote that paper on privacy pools, which basically provides an approach for how privacy protocols like Tornado Cash can be adapted to still provide privacy for the vast majority of users, but lock out bad actors from the system. And there are implementations of this that are already pretty successful. So I think we want to see more of those, and more of those also, not just for the financial use case, but also for identity and reputation type of use cases, and like coming up with those pragmatic solutions, and at the same time like helping users to understand like what level of privacy are they actually getting when they participate in something like that. And I think another one is that we just continue to need to find ways to encourage more and like different groups of people around the world to really participate in the Ethereum ecosystem as not just as users, not even just as application developers, but even as layer 2 developers, wallet developers, and protocol developers. The stronger an ecosystem we have, the more global an ecosystem we have, I think the more we can preserve and increase Ethereum's decentralization over time.
Cool. That's why we have East Taipei. We want to gather more developers to do more.
Yeah.
All right. I think we don't have much time left.
Okay, well, I'll do 60 seconds a question. Go, go, go.
Okay.
I have a watch.
Next one is from Matterstown. Do you have any specific advice to like how non-English writers can participate in the public goods ecosystem? Because normally it's like only for English writers.
Yeah, I mean, I think. First of all, like if you have some level of like English language skill, then creating more translations is something that's always valuable, and just like creating localized like versions and expressions, presentations, articles about similar ideas. Making an effort to actively participate in these protocols, and because I think a lot of them actively are trying to welcome these more participants from around the world. You just need to show up and like actually be a participant, voter, badge holder, participate in like help like aggregate information for other people. Like basically, I think like same advice as my advice to anyone, right? Like if you actively reach out, then I think a lot of people are happy to receive you, and then sort of like pass it on and help make the content for more people.
Go hustle.
Yeah.
Next one from CoinDesk Indonesia. Yeah, this is about Indonesia. So how can the upcoming Ethereum upgrade facilitate greater adoption in developing and unbanked regions like Indonesia, where 66% of population lacks access to banking services?
So stable coins and other like various kinds of DeFi protocols, and even things like play to earn have already been super popular and helpful to people in those regions. The challenge with Ethereum itself, and even with a lot of Ethereum L2s, is that fees are too high. And the main thing is just reducing the fees. The Dencun upgrade helps to reduce those fees, and future upgrades will reduce the fees more.
Nice. All right, the last part is like personal insight, so up to you, to answer. Why are you so interested in longevity? Like, what will you do if you are immortal?
I just like living, like life is fun.
It's fine.
What will I do if I'm immortal? Probably the same kind of stuff that I do today, just like longer. Yeah, exactly.
Good answer. And it's from Coincider. What has surprised you the most in terms of how crypto has evolved and played out? Like, if you want to tell yourself 5 years ago, how are things now? What will surprise you the most? And also, how do you think that, like, 5 years from now? I think we have similar questions before, right? So maybe just the first part.
Yeah, first part. Yeah, I mean, I think in 2020, like as I might have said in other places, NFTs, really surprised me. I think, like now, I mean, the re-rise of meme coins is definitely surprising again. On the positive side, I think the rapid progress in ZK technology has definitely surprised me. That's like one of the things that's really happened faster than we expected, which is very rare in software. I think the increasing speed of rollout of layer 1 protocol changes, right? Like we did the merge and we did blobs like only 1.5 years after the merge, right? And it looks like we're on track to, like do Verkle trees not that far in the future, right? So I'm impressed by that too.
Yeah, it's faster than I thought too. Next one from Black Bar. Could you share one piece of advice you would like to give to Taiwanese developers who are new to blockchain?
I think the most important.
This is the last question.
The most important thing I think is to like find some way through which you feel motivated to participate and keep participating, and like ways in which you actually start to join and become part of the community instead of just being off on your own in a corner and abandoning the whole thing after 2 weeks. So I think in-person events are great for that. I think. Identifying just like some particular basic project and then actually building something is great for that. You could also try joining in the space in the same way that I joined, which is to start off by being a writer. That's a great way to also push yourself to learn.
So join hackathon.